Hey, thanks for joining me. In today's video, I wanted to take a look at a kit that I found pretty interesting. And it's by a company called VTerun, and it includes a variety of things. They call this their off-grid power system. It's a small little kit that's designed to be modular and portable. And it includes mostly off-the-shelf type components, but this little battery that's kind of at the heart of it, this is a 100 amp hour battery that is self-heating, and it's got a couple of other tricks up its sleeve, which I'll show you in just a bit. But let's look at what some of the other optional components are that you can get as part of this kit bundle, or you can buy them separately. So here's their 220 watt solar panel, portable solar panel, and we're going to find out how suitable that panel is or not for this little kit. And let's see what else there is. This is a 2000 watt portable-ish AC inverter. They also have a 1000 watt version that they sell with this kit as well. It's got a couple of AC outlets on this side and a little LCD screen and a Type C and a Type A USB port. It's got a little handle on the top because they consider it to be a little portable setup. And but we're not quite done yet. There's a couple more things. Then of course the battery and the AC inverter both come with their own separate user manuals. The AC inverter does come with some cable here. Now this is, let's see, this is 4 gauge cable. And this is not really, I think, suitable. If you were going to try to max out that 2000 watts at any point for any length of time, you're not going to want to use 4 gauge cable. You're probably going to want something like 2-aught cable, which is much thicker. So this is 2-aught welding cable. And that would be something more appropriate for a 2000 watt AC inverter. But also keep in mind that with a 100 amp hour battery here, this has got a 100 amp BMS. So this is not going to pull more than 1280 watts. So you can get away with this cable for just 1280 watts. But, you know, like I said, if you were going to buy a couple of these batteries, put them in parallel, and then current share across those two batteries, and then that would be a more suitable setup for a 2000 watt AC inverter like this one. In that case, you would not want to use the cables that come with it. You would want to upgrade those to something like 2-aught welding cable. And what's interesting is this AC inverter does seem to come with this little remote control. Now I haven't tried this yet. I haven't in fact hooked any of this stuff up yet, but it's got an off and on. So I'm assuming you can remotely turn the AC inverter off and on with this remote control. At least that's my assumption. All right, let's see what other options we got. They have this little 12 volt lithium iron phosphate 20 amp AC charger. And what's interesting about this is it's got an Anderson connector on one end, which is, I think, kind of unusual. It's got a standard AC power cable connector on this end. Comes with an AC power cable, but it's got that Anderson connector. There's not an Anderson connector on the battery. So it also comes with a couple of other things here. It comes with this little cable that is an Anderson port to a couple of little terminal I rings here, I terminal rings, that you can use to directly connect it up here from the Anderson output if you want. But it's also got this Anderson to MC4 cable, which would allow you to then connect this up to the built-in solar charge controller. You heard me right. This battery, even though it looks like a normal, typical lithium iron phosphate 100 amp hour battery, has a built-in solar charge controller. We'll get into the specs on that in just a second. But it also does come with, this comes with the battery, MC4 cables to allow you to connect it to the solar panel or via MC4 to the charger here if you don't want to connect it to the main terminals. And then it's got a little 2-pin connector here on that as well. But taking a quick look at the manual for that charge controller that's built in here, it handles a voltage range of 10 to 45 volts at a maximum of 20 amps. So again, I think the max input you're going to get is 200 watts. So a 220 watt solar panel is good because you're just 10% over paneled, but the specs are still within the input specs for the charge controller, but that allows you to get a little more input when the sun is maybe not optimal. So if you have a little bit of clouds, you'll get a little more output of a 220 watt panel than you would if you just had a standard 200 watt panel. All right, now I don't remember if I mentioned it before, but this battery is self-heating. So it is designed to turn a little heater on when the temperature drops below a certain set point. So it'll draw from its own power a little bit to make sure that you can continue charging and discharging even in cold weather. Let's take a closer look at this battery. So this battery has an on-off switch, so you can turn it on. And then this is the 2-pin port little aviation threaded connector for the solar input to the charge controller. Then it's got a couple of USB ports. It's got a quick charge Type A and a Type C port. So it's probably an 18 watt type A port, and I'm guessing it's also probably an 18 watt type C port, even though it does say PD power on that. And then it's got a standard 12 volt socket. It's like a DC power station, all self-contained with a charge controller, which is already very cool since it also has self-heating capability. All right, let's talk about the pricing on these components if you were to buy them separately. So the solar panel I have is a 220 watt solar panel for $299. The 1000 watt AC inverter, if you get the 1000 watt version, is $149. The 2000 watt is $249. This self-heating 100 amp hour battery is $249. And then the charger here, the 20 amp charger, is $99. And $99 is already pretty budget priced for a charger. And for a 100 amp hour battery at $249, yes, you can definitely find 100 amp hour batteries cheaper than $249 now. Definitely couldn't have said that a year ago, but I would be surprised if you can find a self-heating 100 amp hour battery for $249 that's lithium iron phosphate and has a built-in 200 watt solar charge controller and has it built-in USB and 12 volt car socket connectors all already inside the battery. So this thing is a full DC power station by itself for $249, which is pretty cool. I'm actually extremely excited about that. This is a very unique form factor. So that's one of the main reasons I agreed to go ahead and review all this, because I've not seen this particular configuration before. So let's jump in and do some testing on this stuff, find out how well this battery performs in terms of discharge capacity, in terms of usable capacity, find out how well this AC inverter works with this battery, find out how well this solar panel works to charge all this stuff, and then we'll get into some of the bundle pricing that VTerun has on this little kit in both the 1000 watt and 2000 watt variations. All right, so let's jump into the testing and see how it all works out. All right, let's do a capacity test on this VTerun SB100H. Now it is a 100 amp hour rated battery, so we are going to hook it up to the tester, pull a continuous 10 amps, and see what kind of capacity we actually get with a direct DC discharge on this. Now, according to the Bluetooth app, I am currently at 100% state of charge. So that's pretty cool. I actually charged it a couple of days ago via solar and just kind of let it sit. So let me go ahead and connect my clamps up to this. I'll have to turn it on. There's a power button on the side. We're reading 13.6, a little over 13.6 volts. Let me go ahead and start. There we go. If I can zoom in on that, but according to the app, we're pulling just under 140 watts at about 10 amps. So the Bluetooth app definitely works. All right, we'll let this thing run all the way down till the BMS shuts it down, and we'll find out how many watt hours we actually got. All right, looks like our DC discharge is totally done. We got 103 amp hours out of a rated 100 amp hours. And we got 1,200 and we'll call it 50, so 49.6. So 1,250 watt hours out of a possible rated 1,280. So those are all very respectable numbers out of this VTerun SB100H. All right, let's connect this thing up to solar and get it charged back up. And it's very cool that we don't need an extra charge controller to do that. We can connect it right into the side. And then we'll connect the AC inverter option and find out what kind of capacity we get through that AC inverter. All right, it is 8 o'clock in the morning. The sun is just coming over the tree line, and I have got this 220 watt panel connected to the VTerun battery here. You can see the power light automatically came on because we are, even though we're at 0% state of charge, the BMS detected an input from the solar panel. Now I will say the solar panel specs are kind of interesting. This is not a solar panel you'd want to put in series with another one of these solar panels on very many power stations, and that is because it has a voltage open circuit of 43.2 volts. So if you recall, the voltage input spec on this battery has a max, I think, of 45 volts. So this panel is especially well suited for this particular battery with that MPPT charge controller in it because of that high voltage open circuit. So notice the operating current or actually the short circuit current probably is a better one to look at. Not a lot of difference there between the operating current and the short circuit current, but 6.61 amps. But the big thing is 43.2 volts. So yeah, for a lot of portable power stations, they max out at somewhere between anywhere from like 40 volts up to like 60 volts, and you really want to be careful not to exceed that input voltage. And this particular panel, if you put two of these panels in series, well, you'd run the risk of putting this well over the 80 volt mark, which is a bit much for most portable power stations. Now, if we take a look at this this panel here, 4-panel design, and it stays nice and flat. It does have those 3-way scent straps there, if you can make that out, which does make it nice because all you have to do is fold it up and the legs will automatically fall back into place. It does have that pebbled ETFE coating, so very durable coating. It feels very well made. So I have to pull up the app and check to see how we're doing here. Now, I'm actually on my phone right now, and I need to use my phone to take a look at the Bluetooth app to find out how much solar input I'm getting right now. It's pretty early in the morning, but I'm going to keep talking right now and overlay that clip, and hopefully we can see here how much solar we are actually getting right now with the sun still very low in the sky. And we'll check back on it a little bit later and kind of just see where we kind of peak out. And I think we got pretty decent sky conditions today, maybe a little wispy clouds here and there. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right, we are coming up on not quite 3 o'clock yet in the afternoon. I did reposition this and try to get a little bit better alignment with the sun, give you a better view of the panel. Still sitting nice and flat even after it's heated up. I was getting a pretty fair sized shadow on that last panel over there, which dropped the output by about I don't know, 25 to 30%, as you would expect. And yeah, I'll pop up the app right now and you can see that we are, in the current sky conditions, getting a little over 120 watts. All right, it is a little after 6:30 p.m. and we are in the shade. I've relocated this thing multiple times throughout the day just to try to catch whatever sun we were getting. And as you saw, we do have pretty wispy skies. It is cleared a little bit, so we got a little bit more in the afternoon than I thought we were going to get. And it did get us to 81% state of charge. You can see we're not pulling anything right now because we're basically fully in the shade. So yeah, I think if we would have had a more of a clear sky day, that 220 watt solar panel here would have gotten us all the way to 100% state of charge. But since we did not, we only got 81%. And that's how it goes sometimes. So I think this is a pretty good panel to pair up with this particular kit. And it's well made, it's easy to deploy, and kind of gets the job done, at least in clear sky conditions. Oh, and before I forget to mention it, there is a little USB module here inside the cable pouch on the solar panel. So you've got a Type-C port, looks like 15 watts, and you've got a quick charge 3.0, which is usually 18 watts on a Type-A port. So yeah, 2 USB ports inside the cable pouch. If you don't want to try to charge a USB device from the battery, you can do it directly from the solar panel. All right, I've got the 2000 watt inverter up here. We're not going to push the 2000 watt inverter to its limits because I am using the included 4-gauge cable, and that's really not gauged high enough to do that. But you'll see here, it does come with some insulating boots, which do a pretty good job of covering up the terminals. It's a nice, easy, relatively tight fit. These are about 16 inches long, let's say. And let's find out if this outputs 110 or 120 volts. Maybe let's just start with that. So, all right, so first thing I need to do is turn the battery on. And by the way, that's kind of nice because I don't get that initial spark when you complete the circuit as the capacitors for the AC inverter start to charge. And there's not that big rush of current that causes you to get the spark that, and maybe sometimes even weld the cable to the terminal. So once I turn the power switch on, now it's live, and I should be able to turn on this guy. Let me see here. Oh, okay. So it is a long press with an annoying beep. And you can see it's reading 14.4 volts and it says 120 volts. Let's find out if that's true. Now on my watt meter here, it should tell me, yes, we are reading a full 120 volts. In fact, 121.3 volts, which is kind of nice. Yeah, I'm gonna have to reset this to do a capacity test. So I'll reset that. All right, so now we are zeroed back out. I'm gonna plug in a load into the watt meter so I can track how many watt hours we're actually going to be using. And let me go ahead and turn that load on. And let's take a quick peek and just see how many watts we're gonna be pulling. And this load, by the way, will probably spike up to somewhere around 500 or 600 watts at some point, which is about a 0.5 C draw on this battery. And we are logging the watt hour. So I'm just gonna let that hang. And yeah, so full 120 volts, which is nice. All right, so let's check back in the morning and we'll see how many watt hours we caught through the AC inverter. All right, it is actually not the next morning. It's just late at night. It's about 10 o'clock at night. But the test is done. And by the way, while it was running, I did test this little remote control, and it does remotely turn the AC inverter on and off. That is indeed what it does. So let's find out how many watt hours out of a possible 1250 we got through the AC inverter. And to do that, I have to plug this into grid power to read it. Wow, so we got 1,220 watt hours, and that's coming through an AC inverter. So there's about a 10% conversion loss from DC to AC you would normally expect. And so that is a very good number, 1,220 watt hours out of a rated 1,280 watt hours. So excellent numbers out of this little SB100H battery. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and reconnect the AC inverter to the battery so I can do an AC inverter no load draw test, find out how much power this thing actually draws when it's not under load and how quickly it depletes the battery. But before I do that, I thought it would be an interesting opportunity to check out these cables. This is these were just sent to me randomly. This is by a company called Ampeak, and these are safety cables, and this is patented. I don't know if I can maybe zoom in on that, but you can see that there is a dual ring terminal design, and it's got a resistor in there. So it's designed to allow you to touch the battery terminal with the cable and let it pre-charge the capacitors in the inverter, so you don't get that sort of surprising spark that can actually sometimes weld the cable to the battery terminal. And then it's got a little terminal protector that slides over. So these are relatively inexpensive. They don't make them in super large gauges. I think maybe the largest gauge they make is 3 gauge, I want to say. These are 4 gauge wires. Yeah, so anyway, let's just try that and see how that works and see if we get a spark. I am going to need to turn the battery on. Otherwise I won't get a spark, because this battery doesn't really require something like this. Well, none of them do, but this battery actually has, since it has an on and off switch already, you can, you're not going to get a spark if you leave it in the off position. But anyway, let's go ahead and try this with the battery in the on position and see if we can get that spark or not. All right, I already have the positive cable connected to the positive terminal, so I'm going to connect the negative one. And I think the idea is that you touch it lightly. Let's see if we get a spark here. No spark. So don't press it down hard, you just touch it lightly. And then you can go ahead and just for 2 or 3 seconds, that's enough to charge the capacitors, and then we'll go ahead and tighten that down. And then there is this little safety slider that covers the terminal, which is nice. All right, so I've got the AC inverter connected using these safety cables. And this is nice because sometimes the problem isn't just the spark. The issue is that you could actually damage components in the inverter or even in the BMS with that sudden inrush of current. And so, yeah, this is just a nice, safer way to do this if you are connecting and disconnecting batteries with some degree of regularity. And this keeps you from having to worry about using something like this. This is a little resistor. You can use this resistor to pre-charge the capacitors at a slower rate to control that inrush current. And these are inexpensive also, but they're kind of a pain to deal with. So I kind of really like this safety cable design. All right, got everything connected. You can see I've got the inverter on, and this remote control, as I mentioned, does give you a way to turn the inverter on and off remotely. I'm not a huge fan of that chirp, but if you really want positive audible indication that the inverter is on. You'll definitely get it with that chirp. I'm going to leave this on, and we're going to test the no load draw or the parasitic draw of this 2000 watt inverter. And I'm currently at 81% state of charge. I'm going to let this run for like 4 hours and then double check and see where we are on state of charge and find out what kind of impact this thing has just sitting here consuming power. All right, it has been almost exactly 4 hours. And interestingly enough, the state of charge has not budged on this. And I'm currently reading 0 watts out and 0 amps out, so no current draw. Now, according to the manual on this 2000 watt AC inverter, the no load draw on this should be about 0.8 amps, which would equate to just a hair over 10 watts. And in comparison, the 1000 watt version of the AC inverter should pull about 0.6 amps, or maybe about 7 watts or something like that. But I'm actually not even seeing that much draw here because I haven't even impacted the state of charge at all. And the watt draw is so low, it's not even being read by the Bluetooth module off the app. So yeah, very low no load draw on this 2000 watt inverter. And that probably explains a little bit why when we ran the the test on this, we got like 95% efficiency out of this thing, even though it says it's rated for 90% conversion efficiency, which is pretty typical. But the actual numbers we got were definitely above average. All right, so for one last test, I'm just kind of curious. This, as I mentioned, this charger here for the battery comes with an Anderson connector, which is a little unusual. And then it also comes with an Anderson to MC4. And so I plugged this into the MC4 battery input on the charge controller. And I'm going to turn this battery charger on. I'm going to actually plug it into grid power. And that should allow us to start charging this battery. Now I'm going to pull up the app here. The middle of the right-hand side there, it shows we are charging at 174 watts at 13 amps. So you can indeed charge the battery with this battery charger through the solar charge controller. And the nice thing about that is I don't have to disconnect the AC inverter to attach those ring terminals. Now, another way to have implemented this, which you could get a cable for this on Amazon, I'm sure, is to get an Anderson to a battery clamp, a little alligator clamp style. And those would allow you to clamp onto the terminals, the positive and negative, and allow you to charge without having to, pull up the M8 bolts on the top to connect those ring terminals, these guys here. So this is, less convenient if I want to charge it real quick. Because I have to disconnect something to attach these little ring terminals. And this is where clamps would have been maybe a better choice. But this is a little more secure than clamps, and it works just as well. So yeah, this little kit from VTerun is actually pretty cool. And like I said, it's mostly kind of off-the-shelf components, except for this battery, which obviously has those cool little extra features, including that built-in 12-volt car socket, the USB ports, the built-in 200-watt charge controller, all kind of built in. The self-heating function, let's not forget about that. And it does have high and low temp protection as well. So it should give you a usable temperature range in terms of Celsius of about negative 30 degrees Celsius up to a positive 60 degrees Celsius. So that's a pretty wide operating range thanks to that self-heating design. But now in terms of bundling, if you bundle this with the 1000 watt inverter, the total price is $749. And that'll save you, I think, about $47 over buying the components individually. Now, if you buy this with the 2000 watt inverter that I'm showing right here, that bundle price with everything else is $799. That's a savings of about $97 versus buying the components individually. But of course, you could buy the components individually if you want to. Maybe you already have a solar panel, in which case you don't need that. Then you can save the $299 and just get these guys separately. Or maybe you've already got a charger. So this will work. You can put this in parallel with another 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery, and it'll work just fine. You just, unless you happen to have the same model, you won't get the self-heating, and you may or may not get the low temp cutoff protection either. So it kind of just depends on what other batteries you might have. But yeah, I think this is a very cool kit, and even priced individually, the components are very competitively priced, even more so if you buy the bundle. So yeah, check it out. I'll put links below if you want to go see what that's all about and see if something like this might work for you. It's a very versatile little kit, kind of an easy way to DIY your own little system. All right, I think that's pretty much a wrap on this video. If you did find any part of it interesting or informative or mildly amusing in some way, if you consider clicking on that like button for me, I'd very much appreciate that. And if you're not already a subscriber, maybe consider subscribing. Got some pretty cool stuff in the pipeline coming very soon, things that I haven't reviewed on this channel, but I think you'll find quite interesting. One of them is quite the science project, I'll say, but more about that in that video. So hey, thank you so much for joining me for this video. I do hope you'll consider joining me for the next one. Until then, have fun out there.